Welcome to Wisdom Exchange TV, a Ignite Excellence Foundation initiative in support of Africa Businesswomen Connected Summit, taking place in Ethiopia in 2013. The Wisdom Exchange is a resource to aid African women to learn, lead, and succeed in life, business, and community. It's a forum where women of all disciplines will learn from African women in politics, business, education, and philanthropy. These are the women that are the change agents of African companies, community, countries, and continent. These women will stretch our perception of what we can do and what we can be. Expert perspective blogs will be updated regularly, so please do subscribe so you do not miss an episode. These are the women that are the leaders of today for tomorrow. Welcome. My name is Suzanne F. Stevens. I'm the host and producer of Wisdom Exchange TV, as well as the president and founder of the Ignite Excellence Group of Initiatives. One of our key initiatives is the Ignite Excellence Foundation, which our mandate is leadership, advocacy, and education, with a vision to inspire and develop women leaders in emerging countries. As an inspirational speaker, a leadership and sales coach, as well as a living coach, I've had the opportunity to work with the women that we're about to interview today. We are in Kampala, Uganda, at the Uganda Federal Alliance's offices with our very special guest, Beti Olive Kamya. She ran in the presidential election in 2011. Although she did not win, she did make big strides with her mandate. Beti Olive is the first woman to form her own political party. Beti formed the Uganda Federal Alliance, and it was registered as a political party in July 2010. Its campaign is focused on the need to change the system of government from unitary to a federal system. One of two women that have ever run for this very honorable seat in Uganda. Beti Olive Kamya was the only female candidate in 2011. She said she will invest the next 5 years in building structures of Uganda Federal Alliance in preparation for the 2016 election. Welcome, Beti Olive Kamya. It is so nice to meet you.
Thank you.
And to meet somebody who's really stood up for your beliefs and wanted your beliefs to be heard by the country of Uganda. So I'm looking forward to gaining your insights. You know, what was the catalyst to pursue politics in the first place?
Well, I didn't, when I was a little girl, say I want to be a politician. I didn't. And even by age 30 or even 40, I didn't say, yes, let me now go into politics. I think I was just dragged along with the events, with the debates that were happening in Uganda, or the events that were happening in Uganda. I am interested in current affairs, and usually I'd like to put an opinion. So I was dragged along, or sucked in, if you like, in the debates of what was going on. And then in 2001, when Dr. Kizza Besigye said he was going to stand for president, I took leave from my job. I was a director of the Wildlife Park, and I campaigned for him, and I never looked back. Became a politician in 2001. But I didn't sit down and think hard about it and make a decision. I was just sucked in, really.
Okay. Now, what made you decide, being a politician is one thing, but to run for a presidential candidate, be a presidential candidate, what inspired that initiative?
Well, nobody was saying the things that I needed to hear. Most of the politicians and the presidential candidates were arguing about the chair, who will sit in that chair. And when they sit there, what will they do? And I thought that, in my mind, there was a different argument. Is that chair properly designed for the job? So they're completely different arguments. And I said, if nobody is raising this argument, I felt passionately about it, that if we do not raise this argument and continue to argue about the chair, then we might be driving in the wrong course.
Okay. So was that the only way that you felt, by running for a president, that you were going to be heard?
In a way, because it's the highest platform that one gets in this country, and the timing is perfect. I mean, you can go on the radio and even buy airtime. You can raise the money and buy airtime on the media and write, but the timing and the person who is saying it are important. So the timing of a presidential campaign and the platform of a presidential candidate, I think that was the best that could offer what I was looking for.
Okay. Now, we know you didn't win, but you did win. But we'll talk about that. You didn't win. You didn't win the seat.
You have to make up your mind.
Exactly. You won based on your objectives. So let's just talk about that. You mentioned in your last statement to Parliament that Uganda needs to move from a unitary system to a federal system. That it's not the president that's the problem, it's the presidency that is the problem, which is the seat which you are referring to. Now, what characteristics does a person need to have to make a change that you believe is required in this country?
I think you just need to be clear in your mind what you're talking about, not just go on and seek office. You must be very clear what you're seeking or what you're saying, even when you don't get the office, that what you're saying is going to be understood. You also need to be a bit daring. It's president, people say, wow, you don't have the money, you don't have the staying power. Actually, one of the media, it was written that she have the staying power. I mean, somebody wrote an analysis of my manifesto and said, she's saying all the good things, but does she have the staying power? So you need to be a bit reckless, I think, because especially when you're not so well facilitated as an incumbent or as some other people that are well facilitated. But you also need to have a passion in what your argument is about, and a bit of courage.
You know, all courage, being daring. I mean, you've only been in politics 11 years?
About
10
years.
Yeah, about 11 years.
In active politics. Okay. But in politics, basically, all my life. I mean, as far as following events is concerned.
Well, we were just talking about earlier, and I think it needs to be mentioned, that you were daring, you were courageous, you took a step, maybe prematurely in some people's minds. Why did you feel, you know what, I'm ready to take that step, regardless of it's too soon for some people for me to try to become president or not? Why did you take that step?
There were some calculations. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't that daring. There were some calculations. I reckoned that President Museveni was getting on in years and how long he can hold on to power. I reckoned that Dr. Beti, who was the main challenger, after 3 trials, unsuccessful trials, would probably not try a 4th time. If he did, it would not be a good idea. And so the field was almost there for the taking. And so there was a bit of calculation. And I thought, anyway, you need to introduce yourself, the politics in Uganda. You don't just come from nowhere and take the bull by the horns. You've got to start, launch yourself. And what better way to launch yourself than to say I'm going to run for president?
Absolutely. People know who you are now.
I think so. I mean, everywhere I go, it's, oh, yes.
What do you feel are some of the biggest obstacles to entry for women in politics?
Well, people, one, don't take you seriously at first. They think you're a joke. I mean, they think there are levels that are reserved for women. Like being vice president, because you are appointed by the president and you'd never be wish to compete against the president. And it's now okay for women to run for parliament and for any other but presidency. So it is a new thing, and the big challenge is even the women. You know, I'll go out in the rural areas and come and see a woman who wants to be president. and then they say, no, this is over the top. You know, you do get comments like over the top, and even it's there, latent, even among women, especially among women. I mean, I didn't get much support from women leaders. I didn't get any support from the known women activists. I mean, I didn't see any of them give me a phone call or a note or an article in the papers or a thumbs up. No, not from the women leaders, not from the known women activists. No, they probably think, not yet. And there's an interesting event that happened after I declared I'd been nominated to run for president. There was a big event here, women's event, and big names like President of Liberia, Johnson Sirleaf, attended, and other big women in this country. And after a 3 days workshop, a lot of high talking, one of the recommendations or resolutions out of that meeting, very high-powered meeting, was that we are going to demand that President Museveni appoints a woman for vice president. And I went to them and said, you don't need to ask President Museveni to appoint a woman. You've got an opportunity to elect a woman president. And they thought it was a joke. They all laughed. So the problem comes from your own, they just don't take it seriously. They think that women can only go so far. Even the top women leaders. That was the experience I got.
So what do you think needs to change in order for women? Let's just look at women promoting women. Do you have any ideas on what needs to change in order for that to actually happen?
Yeah, awareness. Sharing experiences, for instance, in that workshop, and after I have stood and other women, it's happening. It's slow, and I think it's in the right direction. Talk about it. Sensitization. That's the way. Affirmative action, where it's necessary. But affirmative action has its own setbacks sometimes. But many times, it's a good stepping stone.
I do find it troubling that women in higher ranks would not support you.
It's not that would not. Maybe they didn't think about it. Didn't.
Okay.
Maybe they didn't.
Okay. Do you have any insight into why that may be the case?
Several. One, they already belong to their political parties and maybe have positions of responsibility in their own political parties, and they have their loyalties to the respective presidential candidates. I mean, it just happened. I didn't get time to campaign, sit with some women, have a one-on-one chat, make them see my point of view. So I do admit that the timing was dramatic, if you like. But then they have their own political loyalties, personality loyalties, and the ideology is very controversial in Uganda. The concept of federalism is highly controversial in Uganda, just breaking very new and, if you like, controversial ground. Mm-hmm. So for all those people who play safe, normally would play safe.
But I think you bring up a really good point, and something that needs to be accented is the fact that just because you're a woman, you're not going to be, it doesn't mean everyone's going to follow you that's a woman. Just because you're a woman, you still have to earn the right, which you may have, but the timing, you may not have had enough time to do that. So those are kind of good lessons for just because you're this doesn't mean you're going to get the followers. You may have to do certain steps in order to achieve the loyalty of those women as well. So if you do this, will you run again?
I would, of course, if my party, your party is going to sponsor you.
Right.
If my party sponsors me and everything remains as is, good health, and I don't see why not if everything remains as it is today. But you're raising an interesting point that sometimes a lot of people miss, that you've got to merit, whether you are a man or a woman, or a Catholic or a Protestant or a European or African. Those are just the sides. You should first of all merit the status that you're aspiring for. And for me, I just think that in my case, I do have the time now. Then I didn't have the time. And it all came in the heat of the campaign when people are already geared up. And there are laws here in this country. If you're nominated, say, to parliament on a particular political party ticket, you don't change halfway and go to another party and their party code of conduct. You toe the party line. There are many things. But I would have appreciated a phone call or a text message. Hey woman, you're doing us proud. And it's the women at the grassroots that say that a lot. You did us proud. I would have appreciated that. Sorry, I can't support you because I belong to this political party and I don't agree with your ideology, but hey, you've done us proud. It would have meant a lot to me.
A lot of pioneers don't get recognized until after they've achieved their objective. So I can appreciate that. That could be frustrating. Now, what are some of the biggest perceptions you needed to overcome as a politician, do you think?
To run for president?
Mm-hmm. Or even in politics, it could be either or. Just being part of the political party.
Yeah, you have, and I read that a lot I'm reading Tony Blair's book, which I'm enjoying greatly. It's called The Journey. And I think we share a lot of his experiences. Towing the line can be very frustrating. Sometimes you don't agree with the line, but you're required to toe the line or be radical. And sometimes you toe the line up to a point, and that's what I've done many times, up to a point, and then I can't go on anymore. Then I move out, or I challenge whatever the status quo. But I think that's a big problem of like what you're expected to do. You get cornered once you take a position. I loved being an analyst, political analyst. That's what I used to call myself before I got into mainstream politics. Then you yourself, then you say your mind, and nobody says you've been compromised. So the jacket, the boundaries that we operate in are very intimidating and limiting, if you like.
Okay. So what opportunity, let's just say that Uganda was now led by a woman. What opportunities and challenges do you see with that on the international stage?
Well, of course, people will think that they can put you down or drag you along, or, whatever, the usual gender attitudes. But it's up to the woman to stand her ground, to what do you say? It's up to the woman to defend herself by being herself, by standing her ground. Of course, there will be challenges, but I think even the word is getting used after Margaret Thatcher and then your own Mary Robinson and the German, everywhere. It seems to be the era of women now. So I think the word is getting used to women leaders, and if they prove themselves, then people will listen.
Well, there's never been a woman president, though, in Uganda.
No, that would be the first.
So there will be some hesitation with that role. But if they elect you, obviously, there's a belief that sort of change. But I was just curious if you felt, to get that role and that honor, if Uganda, how long do you think they'll be ready for that, do you think?
I think they'll be ready when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Any country, Uganda will be ready to have a one-man president when they get a woman president. But it will be now the task of the woman president to prove that a woman president can be just as good or even better. But what is more specific or intriguing in a country like Uganda, the military is more an issue of ability than just the gender. I mean, if I was a woman with a military background, that would be impressive. If you are a man without a military background, people are a bit uncomfortable with you. If you're a man with a military background, that's perfect, according to Ugandans. Given the more recent history, the post-colonial history, the military is a big factor. Also, if I was a woman with a military background, it'd be very easy to be respected. But for me, that's not one of my serious worries, because at a smaller levels, I have been head of institution and CEO and head of department, and you lead a group of men and women, and you lead them in a manner that makes them respect and trust you to lead them. So the national thing is just an expansion of what we've been through before. And going to a co-ed helped. Co-ed schools, I think, helps, because from the beginning you are tussling it out with boys in every field. I think it helps.
That's a really good point.
Girls that have been to co-ed school, like King's College Bodo, and girls that have been to an all-girls school, they have a slightly different character when they go to university and are more independent. You can see that the girls that have been to all-girls schools, they have a slightly different character. Mm-hmm. Not better or worse, but slightly different. They perceive their roles and slightly different from those of boys. But the girls that have been in boys' schools, they just, if the boy wants to do it, I will do it. I can do it.
It's a little bit more survival, kind of, with the boys' school. Is that sort of what if you're a girl going
in a way, you learn to stand up to the boys, because first of all, you grow up with them. You grow up with them. There does come a time during puberty when you're trying to understand it. Each one is trying to understand themselves, but then you're together still. Mm-hmm. So I think that helps a lot, or does have an effect.
So, a slightly different version of a question I asked before, but what characteristics do you think a woman needs to have to be successful in politics?
And just like men, I think it has a lot to do with your background when you're growing up. You need a home environment that encourages, that builds self-confidence in a person, whether it's a man or a woman. If you're not lucky to have such a background that helps you, and different environments, some comfortable home environment helps people to have self-confidence, and some not so comfortable environments help people to survive, to learn to survive on their own. So I think it does come out, and of course, as you grow, as you take your path, follow your path in the world, depending on the school, depending on which teacher impressed you, which the character of the school you went to. There are so many things that eventually come into play, but at the end of the day, the person you need is a person who is human and compassionate. You need those things to be able to share, to feel people's pains and needs. You need to be compassionate, but also hard work. A lot of hard work. Nothing comes on a silver plate. You need to put in a lot of hours and all the resources really. But as a person, you need to have the gift of a visionary person. Know where you want to go and what you wish for the people that you lead, where you want them to go. It's a difficult question.
No, it is a difficult question, but there are certain, there's characteristics too that maybe because of the time that are needed, or it could be a universal characteristics of all time that you need. So, what does Uganda need now? What characteristics would a woman need in order to take a seat as a president of Uganda?
You need, woman or man, you need some managerial skills, management, basic principles of management. They are so important, but I don't think that people usually attach that importance to any, because it's a management job. You need to communicate, you need to help the team to develop a common vision and motivate the team to work towards that vision and hold the team together with a carrot and stick, maybe methods, and provide leadership that people trust in. Fair, especially fair. People should trust you to be fair and reasonable. So, but if you have been through some management experiences previously, you will have had some professional training in the basics of managing society, managing a vision, and managing an organization. It does help on top of your own personal competencies, like a sense of analysis.
So it's a good segue into the leadership itself. What do you think a good leader? What characteristics does a good leader have then? Management skills, for sure. And it's interesting too, what you're saying is you're focusing on the business skills in a leadership position rather than perhaps the skills of that come with serving in the army, which is definitely a different approach. So having business skills, what other things would make a good leader?
The morals, I think, they're important. No matter which, I'm not even talking about faith, but the values. Let me call them values. The values that a person grows up with, and they don't just happen. They're inculcated in a person as they grow, or you pick them. And then other things that you pick, the good from different situations and that you've been through, as a person that is led, who was a good leader and who was not a good leader in your own experience as you take your journey through life. So you will pick a lot of things from a good leader who could also have picked it from their own character as a person and then their own experiences and training. So that's, at the end of the day, to be president, you should have a fair amount of experience from which to draw. And you should be conscious that you are leading people and they're looking to you to provide leadership in a management society, in a service provision, in their welfare. I mean, you are the one that is supposed to sort out their welfare. In communication skills, in conflict resolution, conflict management, and there's so many things that a leader should have.
So what are some key steps that you think a woman needs to do to be taken seriously in politics?
You've got to be consistent, one. And to be clear in your communication and in your direction. It's very rough because people are easily intimidated. You can start to say something and say, oh, you can't say that. But for me, if I believe it, I will say it. Many times it's risky and costly. if you say what you believe and what you want to say, it will cost. I mean, there are people who lost their lives, like the Galileos of this world, who said the world is, it's round. And the world said it is flat, and he said it is round. And he's lost his life. Sometimes it's very, very costly. But I think at the end of the day, it does vindicate you to be consistent and to know. You also have to equip yourself with knowledge and information. You've got to read and research and know what's going on, be interested in almost everything. You've got to be knowledgeable so that you can discuss or participate in any discussion about any event. It's very important to be knowledgeable. Then people will look up to you and trust you.
Knowledgeable where though? Like you mentioned the army. If you're a woman that was in the army, you may be even taken more seriously at running, or have a better chance, perhaps is a better way of saying, of winning that seat.
Here
in Uganda. Would you say, if you were doing a career path for a woman who, unlike yourself, who was a child and said, I would like to be the president, what sort of ideas would you give them that maybe you did or you didn't do that would set you up for that success?
Well, if I was bringing up a daughter, that's what you're saying. My daughter wanted to be president, and I want to groom her to be president from an early age. I think what you should do is to allow them to try everything, be a jack of all trades if you like, not lose an opportunity. Let's not lose any opportunity to learn, even if it's to change a car tire, about the military or everything. It's very important. It's also important to have communication skills, because politics is about charisma, people skills, and communication. That is important. Also, management, as we said previously. I would definitely put them in a management school or opportunity for management schools. The army is also a good thing. I don't see a problem with a stint in the military. Then you can talk authoritatively. I mean, there's so much warfare around the world, even if it's not in Uganda. But it's an added advantage to be talking authoritatively about war and warfare. And well, I think I would encourage them to pick as much as they can from every side.
Okay. So what has been the most significant impact you feel you've had to date on the political landscape?
Sorry.
What do you think the most significant, it's the crows outside.
I was clearing my throat.
What has been the most significant impact you feel you've made on the political landscape in Uganda so far?
One, I think, right from the start, I was bold. I think people would say I was bold because when I started opposition politics, there were a few of us who would stand up and say the things we said. Other people, most people, especially including men, were more cautious. Wanted to be cautious and see how things would roll out. But it's not just me. There were other women in Uganda. I remember, like Honorable Cecilia Gwal, Honorable Winnie Byanyuma, where, said what they wanted to say, and said it well and got listened to. So what I think the big contribution that I have made as a woman is to change the debate. I think change the debate, the focus of the debate, from the personality of the president to the character of the presidency. I think it's beginning to come through. I meet a lot of people, even those who don't agree with me. It's enough that they're debating it. It wasn't debated a year ago. It was always, is Museveni good or not good? And the answer is, he should go, he should stay. And before Museveni was Obote good, he's good, he's not good, he should go, he should go. So it's always been about the personality of the president. So I have introduced it's always been there, but we've kind of put more force into it. Why don't we focus on the presidency? And basically, because we're saying focus on the presidency because the president is transient. The template seems to be the problem because we've had 9 presidents. They come and go, but we still have our problem, and it's still the same problem. So let's get out of the box and look at something else. I'm glad that the debate is gaining momentum.
Absolutely. Today, what has been the most rewarding aspect of your career?
Basically, it's that. Really, it is that. When you're associated, or when a theme, an idea, becomes associated with you, the individual, or you even call you that name, they give it to you, you own it. I think it's for me, it's a great thing. Even founding a political party, you know that I was in FDC before, and my issues with FDC were issues that I discussed with many people, and they agreed with me. And when I didn't find a position of compromise, my friends, my colleagues were saying, listen, I think we should go back. And I said, how do we sort this issue? And they were like, you don't have a choice, the party will crush you. It was like, the party will crush you. And I said, but the party can't crush me because I'm standing for an idea. The party can't crush an idea. How will it crush me? And my friends went back in the fold of the party. It was like, first of all, you can't start a political party. Do you think it's easy to found a political party? It's not. And the party will crush you. You're just an individual. So those are the insecurities that you go out with. And it's quite lonely at the beginning. You're lonely.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, the party doesn't crush you, but you have a party that is fairly, that's credible and has a potential to become a big party.
So what would be the biggest challenge that you've had so far in your career?
Particularly getting misunderstood. People will always put a spin on everything you do, everything you say. That woman is power hungry, They will not listen to what you say. That woman is over ambitious. It hurts me to be misunderstood. I like to think of myself as a very ordinary person. I don't have big ambitions. I just like to see what I believe in carried forward, and if there's somebody to carry it forward, I'm happy to sit back. I mean, I don't think I'm the one who should be, I think that I am the one who must be in front. And so my biggest challenge really is to be misunderstood. And for being misunderstood, people can say very cruel things. They can be very cruel.
To that, I have to say that often people who stand up for their beliefs and are the first to really push that belief forward are often misunderstood or attacked. But those are the people that make the changes that we all look up to and say, at first there's no followers, and then all of a sudden when the change is made, it's like, I want to be your friend. So on behalf of women and trailblazers, I thank you for standing up for what you believe in, regardless of what others think you're trying to do. What you're doing is very noble.
Thank you.
And you're exercising your belief, and I'm not supposed to take a side, but I do love the fact that you're standing up for your belief, and that Trailblazers are often the ones that people throw stones at first, but then they follow them later on.
It's also, there's another question that people always ask, but who else is with you? I mean, there's so many people around with me, but they want big names. What they say, but you're a loner. They want some big names defecting. But big names don't defect. They have interests. They have positions of responsibility. They have children in school. They want to rock the boat. They have career paths worked out. That's why I said you have to be reckless in a way to get out. And so, knocking on doors, knocking on doors and answering some, unfair questions, and it is a challenge.
Now, has there been any initiative that you have implemented that in the party or in your career that just did not work that you can think of?
Yeah, I can think of many.
Can you share one?
I can think of several if you give me a few minutes. Sometimes you just got to, you take, say in a debate, and you take a line, and the audience is no, and you quickly have to work it out and say no, I will not pursue that. Although for this moment, it will just kill my presentation, and you fumble a bit trying to find another path away from something you worked on for a long time. You do fumble a bit. An example I have is recently I went to the UK. There was a conference that I'd been invited to for Ugandans, predominantly Ugandans. And when I was making my presentation, that audience was very, very anti-President Museveni. And my views, I've already said, for me Museveni is not the problem. He is a problem, but not the problem. The problem is more complex than an individual president. But the people didn't want to hear that. They wanted to hear he's a big problem and must go. And if you don't, first of all, sort that out, then you're lying. And along the way you say, okay, fine. If he is a problem, he's a problem, and you move on. So sometimes people have got fixed mind that you just have to concede for that moment. Well, that was a typical example that happened recently. And well, first of all, it's not been so hard because all the people who have joined Uganda Federal Alliance are people who believe in federalism. So we have one passion. Mm-hmm. They came from the different political parties. Some of them were apolitical, but they all have a passion of an ideology, which is slightly different from other parties where the passion is about the president, whether you like him or you don't like him.
Mm-hmm. So this kind of brings us to our edginess segment, and as I define edginess, it's something that you've had to do in your career that made you uncomfortable, but you needed to do it and continue to do it in order to achieve your objectives. Can you give us just a short example of something that you need to do that makes you uncomfortable, but to achieve your objective?
Even when I was in the corporate world, I would not pass on a difficult task to someone, which I knew that was a difficult task, like asking somebody who is a friend, a colleague, to terminate their services. That is something that is really hard, and then you can't pass it on to someone else. You have to do that. But in my political life, in 2007, I invited my president, Dr. Beti. I was a special envoy in the office of Dr. Beti, and we've been working very closely together. You would say I was one of his very staunch loyalists. But I thought that he should not run for president a third time. And I thought about it, and I said, well, we discussed it with other people, but I thought I should tell him my views. It was hard. And so I invited him and said, you know what, I really think that you should not run for president a third time. And it was about a 45-minute, very difficult conversation. And I think eventually it led to our split. It led to, it's one of the reasons that it led to our split. And when I mentioned it to one of the men, who I thought was very brave and should have done it himself, he said, you know what, don't go saying things like that, and never, don't raise it again. People don't want to be told not to stand. So that was a difficult conversation.
So your edginess is sort of having those difficult conversations and continuing to have those difficult conversations, which sounds like over the next 5 years you're going to have a lot of difficult conversations.
I'm getting hardened a bit, but you never get hardened.
So as a leader, what do you find are 3 most powerful pieces of advice you can give to someone trying to lead in politics or a project or a team or any initiative for that matter?
Well, you need to keep the team together. It's very important to keep your team together. To make yourself available to your team so that you're reachable, and to have regular consultations. People need to feel that they're part of the decisions made. Although normally very often they will wait to see where you want to go, and then they will go with you, but they still get a sense of participation. I think the most important thing is to build a strong, cohesive, motivated team. But the motivation comes out of defining your goal, your vision. It should be, people should own it and be passionate about it. It has to be communicated in such a manner that your team are passionate about it, and then they will give their all out of passion, not out of expediency. That's the best way to get results.
Excellent. So what is next for you?
Next for me, I am going to concentrate on building my team. Together, we build this party. We need to get down to the grassroots. We have 4 years. I'm giving it 4 years, 3 years, because the 4th year will be campaign year. But we're going to work very hard these 3 years to get our ideology down to the people. We shall do less. A lot of politicians do a lot of media, and they neglect the grassroots. But it's the one that goes and marks, brands or marks the people that will take the day. I've learned that the hard way in many cases. You stand up and give a fantastic speech and you get a standing ovation. But people who did their homework the night before or the week before, will take the day if it's an election day. So we are going to build this party.
Excellent.
And of course, that takes a lot of networking, national and international networking. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to be talking to people from Canada. That's one way of networking, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The next question I ask, given the chance, what would you love to do that you haven't done yet? Often people say run for president. So, because you've already done that. Given the chance, what would you love to do that you haven't done yet? And that could be anything. That could be outside your professional life.
Actually, I'm looking forward. I think I should be looking to retirement, from mainstream politics in another 10 years, at the very most 15 years, but I'm planning for 10 years. At the very most, maybe, at the most 15 years. What I would like to do is I love culture, I'm fascinated by culture. I would like to read, write, and make presentations on culture. That's religion, culture, way of life. That's what I know it's on the side. That's what I'm going to do. And I would like to do it. I'll probably buy a place in a place like Zanzibar and get some guests, tourists, 10 guests can look after me. And I read and write and travel, talk about culture. I'm very intrigued by religion, particularly instead African religion, which has been forced to hibernate. The African religion, one of the effects of colonialism was to demonize African religion. And so those who practice it is in darkness. But when you get to know about it, it's a religion like any other. It's a faith in God, whatever. I'd like to study more about religion. And there's a faith, the Buddhists, the whatever, Baha'i. It's actually similar.
I can introduce you to some people that are studying a lot on religion. So
I would love that.
Excellent. Now, earlier on we had mentioned, and just 3 more questions just to wrap us up. Earlier on, we actually talked about this daughter. Do you have?
I have 3 daughters, 4 daughters.
Oh, 4 daughters. Okay. So the youngest one is how old now?
She's 20.
20. Okay. So let's put her at 10 years old today. Okay. Let's put her at 10. Knowing what you know now, what words of wisdom would you give to her?
I give her every day words of wisdom. They're different. When I look at my daughters, they're 4 and they're different. And somehow, their words of wisdom are related to their different parts. Of course, when they were younger, and even they're still young, as girls, I tell them there's no rush. Take your time. The girls want to, if you're not married by 30, it's a bit late, and and I just said there will be a time for you to get into all those things. Just know yourself, understand yourself. Let's discuss you. Let's know where you want to go. Let's choose what you enjoy. Maybe that's what I'll say. Is that and this is what I said to my daughter. I think a couple of days ago, because she has good hands. I noticed she has good hands. She was massaging me, and I felt that she was good. I said, you need to look for something that you enjoy doing, so that you can become famous, very good at it, famous, rich, and have fun, instead of doing something that you don't enjoy doing. Become a mediocre doctor, a mediocre lawyer. You don't even enjoy it, and you don't even get any money out of it. As a career guidance, I really would like people to enjoy their job.
It's excellent advice. Now, what advice do you wish you received at 10 years old?
I remember my father had very clear paths made by himself for each one of us. He wanted me to be a doctor. He wanted my sister to be a lawyer. He wanted my brother to be an engineer. I mean, in those days, those were the prestigious careers. So we were not really exposed to, and the world wasn't so open then. It was, if you're very clever, if you're very intelligent, to prove it, be a doctor, be a lawyer, you couldn't be a musician. So I wish we'd had some of those career guidances at the time. But at the times were different. Right?
So what words do you wish your father then said to you then?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Okay.
Because I think that my father raised us to be very independent, confident and self-independent. Self-confident and independent. I mean, he would just ask you to do something that children of your age would not normally be asked to do. Like go to town and get me a bank draft. Just money, because those were way out activities that children my age and my community would not even know that there's a bank draft. But if my father wanted a bank draft done, he would just ask you to go, here's the money, go write it, and you adventure, you find out.
Which is, curious, your dad wanted you to be a doctor. You ended up going into business world and then into political world. I'm just curious, did he support that?
Well, unfortunately, he died before I went into all that. But of course, I kind of drifted along. There was a kind of drifted along with what was easy, I suppose. And medicine, I realized I couldn't even kill a cockroach. Touch a cockroach.
Just a final question. What words of wisdom would you like to impart to African women?
African women can change Africa. They only need to know that they can. One, with their numbers, the easy one. They just have to know the power that is in their numbers. And they just need to be hung together and know that they are the victims, the main victims of the problems of hunger and conflict and childbirth and raising children. They have so much at stake that they need to get involved in managing this world, and they can do it with their numbers and educating their daughters, their children.
Excellent words of wisdom. Thank you so much, Beti.
Thank you.
Great opportunity to get insight into a politician and her words of wisdom and advice for women of Africa, not only of Uganda, but women of Africa, and really taking a stand. My name is Suzanne F. Stevens, and I co-produce Wisdom Exchange TV with my husband, Michael K. Ginrich. We're traveling all over Africa, and we just come from Kenya. Now we're in Uganda. We'll be in Rwanda next week, and the following week in Ethiopia, conducting interviews just like this with women leaders that are truly the change agents of Africa. If you know a woman that we should research and see if she qualifies for an interview and has really been a leader, a trailblazer, or has many people follow her, please email us at info@wisdomexchangetv.com. And if you are part of an organization and you want to tap into African women and be at the front and center, we are conducting in Ethiopia in 2013 Africa Businesswomen Connected Summit, which will invite top business leaders all over Africa, as well as university students and high school students that are women that will be the change agents and educate women to be the best that they can be in the business world. Please do send again to info@wisdomexchangetv.com. Again, my name is Suzanne S. Stevens, and I want to leave you with my final words of wisdom. 80% of us don't do what we can do because 80% of the time we're getting in our own way. What I recommend to you is give yourself permission to have the courage to dare, to be the best that you can be. Till next time, thank you for joining us.